From all the planets in the solar system, Venus is the one that makes the closest approach to the Earth. Its existence has been known since ancient times, simply because it can be seen with the naked eye. For centuries, it was considered a twin planet to the Earth, because it has a similar size. But when observations were performed with more detail, it was seen that it is completely covered with dense clouds. More than 30 missions having Venus as its final goal have taken place, but currently only one satellite is in operations orbiting around Venus, the Japanese space-proof AKATSUKI, also known as the Venus Climate Orbiter. Previous missions that already ended operations include MAGELLAN from NASA and Venus Express from the European Space Agency. Analysis of the observations of these satellites indicated an unpleasant reality. More than 96% of Venus' atmosphere is composed of carbon dioxide, which causes a greenhouse effect. And also there are dense clouds composed of sulfuric acid. The atmospheric gases are keeping Venus very hot. In fact, it's so hot on Venus that many metals remain liquid. The surface temperature on Venus is on average 460 degrees Celsius. The Soviet Union also sent several landers to Venus, most of them part of the so-called VENERA program, but those landers became useless in less than 1 hour after they arrived to the surface of the planet because of the harsh environmental conditions. Venus is the hottest planet in the solar system, and it has an extraordinary characteristic. It rotates on itself very slowly, and in the opposite direction to other planets in the solar system. On Venus, the Sun rises from the west. Venus takes about 243 Earth days to turn only once on itself. But because it's so close to the Sun, a year passes very fast. For Venus, it takes 225 Earth days to turn around the Sun. Therefore, on Venus, 1 day is a little longer than 1 year. Since it was known that Venus was not the best candidate to be inhabited by man, for decades scientists have sought life elsewhere, usually focusing on Mars and, more recently, on glacial moons of planets far away from the Sun, like Europa, a moon of Jupiter. However, in September 2020, a new discovery shocked scientists. At the top of the atmosphere of Venus, astronomers discovered signs of what could be life. Astronomers who reported on these findings detected a large concentration of phosphine molecules in Venus' thick upper atmosphere. This was done by measuring the rotation transition of the phosphine molecule, whose wavelength is close to 1 millimeter. After a deep analysis, scientists claim that only some form of life can explain the presence of phosphine in the atmosphere of Venus. Sousa-Silva, a molecular astrophysicist at Harvard University, is part of the group of researchers who are actively studying Venus and the possible existence of life in that planet. She said, "We know that it is an extraordinary discovery, but we may not know how extraordinary it is without going back to Venus." Many scientists believe that Venus was once covered with water and it possessed an atmosphere where life, as we know it, could have flourished. In the early days of the solar system, Earth was not a friendly environment for human beings and for the animals that now populate our planet. Earth's primordial air was composed mainly of carbon dioxide, and it is now the case on Venus. In those primordial times there was life on our planet, but it was a type of life that doesn't need oxygen, which is also called anaerobic life. Venus does have the possibility of counting with life forms as we know here on Earth. At about 50 kilometers high in the Venusian atmosphere, the temperature drops to 30 degrees Celsius, and there is a pressure similar to that of ground level on Earth. There is even a mixture of gases similar to that of the Earth's atmosphere, with nitrogen being the most abundant. In June 2017, Jean Greaves, an astronomer at Cardiff University, set out to test the hypothesis of the existence of anaerobic life on Venus' atmosphere, and using the James Clerk Maxwell telescope in Hawaii, looked for signals from several specific molecules. One of the chemicals she was looking for was phosphine, a molecule that can be created by living organisms. Jean Greaves and also Sousa-Silva point to phosphine as a possible proof of life on Venus and also in other parts of the Milky Way. On Earth, phosphine is a poisonous gas that is associated with microbes. In March 2019, to deepen the investigation, scientists used the Atacama Large Millimeter Array in Chile belonging to the European Space Observatory, and they observed that all the measurements pointed to 1,000 times higher amount of phosphine than the one found in the Earth's atmosphere. But before targeting anaerobic life as the only possible source for the existence of the large quantities of phosphine observed in Venus, the research team spent more than 1 year running computer simulations on the recreation of the Venusian environment to test different explanations. Other possible non-biological sources of phosphine could be associated with volcanic activity and lightning events, but these sources could not produce the phosphine levels observed in the measurements. However, living beings in large quantities could produce considerable amounts of phosphine gas. But this is not the first time that we found gases in other planets that could be explained as byproducts of life. For example, methane and oxygen fumes on Mars can also be produced by chemical reactions that do not involve life at all. The scientific world is not questioning the presence of phosphine on Venus, but what kind of life could exist in the clouds of Venus at about 50 kilometers altitude to produce this type of gas? The scientific community and also the aerospace industry have started to look again with great interest at Venus, a fascinating planet still to be discovered.